The 2018 Ourlads NFL Draft Preview is out because it's never too early to talk about the NFL Draft. And who better to talk about the draft prospects than Dan Shonka, who will tell us the players to keep an eye on when watching the Georgia Bulldogs defense that's shutting down the competition and giving them a legitimate chance to win the SEC. We'll also go over the key players at Wisconsin, including one of his top-rated tight ends, Troy Fumagalli. Speaking of Wisconsin, their former coach Gary Anderson is out at Oregon State, so what happened there? And does former Stanford quarterback Kevin Hogan really have a chance to start in the NFL? All that and much more as the Ourlads Football Network with Dan Shonka on PSN starts now. All right, it is a Wednesday, the 11th of October, 2017. I'm your host, Greg DePalma, and, I felt it in respect and honor for the biggest upset of the season. For anybody out there that loves Iowa State football, here's this. All right, Matt Campbell is kicking some butt with the Cyclones after a big win, his signature win over Oklahoma. And Dan Shonka is going to join us now. And Dan, Matt Campbell, here's a guy that was 31 years old when he got the head coaching job at Toledo. He had a very difficult situation in his first year at Iowa State. I mean, it takes a while sometimes to rebuild these programs. And for him to go out there and get a big win like this in year two is huge for him. People are going to start taking notice of Matt Campbell.
Well, I hope not, because that's the problem at Iowa State. A lot of, coaches they look at that as a stepping stone. I mean,
yeah.
Gene Chizik was there 1 year before he went to Auburn, which they probably shouldn't have hired him. But I think Campbell's a little bit different. He may hold on at Iowa State until Ohio State job is open. He's an Ohio guy, and I know money talks, but you know what? Kirk Ferentz has stayed in Iowa City. When early in his career, every other time there was an NFL opening or, his name was always mentioned with it, and he wanted to raise his family in a nice town and things like that. And he stuck around here, and same thing. I think Campbell might have that. He's an Ohio guy, and hey, he's already coached at one of the top MAC schools there. So the only other, I guess Cincinnati you could look at would be a step up from the MAC, but it wouldn't be as, I think Iowa State's a better, place to live than Cincinnati. And so, I think that was the first thing I saw the other day. Some of these talking heads on Twitter were saying stuff like, well, how he's going to be, we've already heard his name being bandied about in the Southeast Conference and things like that. Well, that's crazy because he's just getting the program going.
Yeah.
That was his first big win. So what were they talking about? His 2-win season last year?
Yeah.
So, but anyway.
You know how it is.
But no, I'm happy. I think, Matt, first of all, he's doing stuff the right way. His staff is doing a great job recruiting, and they're doing a lot of things. And he really works hard at it. He's like an Urban Meyer or a Nick Saban in regards to the way he goes after recruiting. So he's that's, I know it sounds crazy, but a lot of coaches out there in college do not work as hard at recruiting as they should. And then they end up getting beat and they wonder why they lost, or their assistants do. Because there's a lot of staffs out there that only have like 4 assistants that are real good recruiters.
Yep.
And if you get a staff of about 8 of them, you're in business,
Yeah, matter of fact, that was what we heard in the news regarding Gary Anderson at Oregon State, that apparently he wasn't real happy with his assistants. They haven't been recruiting very well there. Of course, I don't agree with the way he handled the situation. The way he was trying to defend himself is, well, look, I'm not going to go firing people. The buck stops here, basically. Well, yeah, but if you don't think that these guys are getting the job done, then I don't think that that's fair to anybody. I mean, if they're just not getting the job done, then you fire them and you bring in other guys that can get the job done. I mean, you don't just go, okay, well, we're going to lose or I'm going to quit because I hired the wrong guys. That doesn't even make sense to me. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't understand any of that.
Yeah, well, first of all, I was shocked that he went up there from Wisconsin, but Wisconsin has always had kind of a lid on what they're going to pay assistant coaches, and no matter how much money they got coming in, they're only going to give coaches. And that's why, Brett Bielema left there, and and Anderson, he just, I don't think he felt comfortable in Madison for some reason, because hey, it's a lot like the West. I mean, it's better than Utah State where Gary was at. Gary's a very good football coach, but he goes into Oregon State, which to me it's harder. Hey, you're last in recruiting up there because Oregon's going to get their players, Washington's going to get some. Leach has done a great job at Washington State, but in the Northeast there's only so many players, and you got to spread out and get them. And obviously, like you said, his staff didn't do it, but he is a very good football coach. That's the thing that's disheartening, I guess.
Yeah.
But anyway,
he needs a new fresh start. Maybe go back to a smaller conference, less pressure. Whatever. Very strange situation there. The Ourlads, again, as I mentioned at the top, the NFL preview, the draft preview's out, so it's available at ourlads.com. We talked a little bit about it last week. So, again, all anybody has to do is go to the website, and they just go to the description page where they can order everything. They can order everything online at that one page, correct? On your website?
Yep, absolutely. Yep, they can go to subscription and click on there, and but like I said, this time of year, almost everybody gets the total package, and which gets the monthly newsletters and the preview and the review of the draft and the draft guide. But we always pick up a lot of people right before the draft who just want the draft guide, so it's kind of what you like to do.
All right. By the way, Wisconsin, since we're talking about Wisconsin, the Badgers, one of my sleeper teams, because I still think they're a sleeper team from a couple of weeks ago. They're not where Georgia is right now. We'll get to them in a minute. But Wisconsin is still considered a sleeper, probably because they're in the same conference as Penn State and Ohio State. But Wisconsin is not in the same division. So when you take a look at their schedule, they have a very, very manageable schedule with Michigan at home on November 18th, with Iowa before that. But really, there's no Penn State and there's no Ohio State. So Wisconsin right now is in good position to get to the Big Ten championship game, possibly undefeated, which means they just win one big game in the Big Ten championship game. They could be going to the playoffs. So I think a lot of people might have been surprised about this, considering how much talent, key talent. They didn't lose a lot of players, but they lost any of the players they lost on defense last year were key guys. I mean, just take a look at how T.J. Watt's performing for Pittsburgh, and I think the Steeler fans know exactly what Wisconsin's missing. So when you take a look at this defense, who's still there for Wisconsin? Who's making all the big plays, or who are the guys that you're keeping an eye on?
Well, I tell you what's really too bad, because I've been studying the last couple of weeks a lot of 2016 film on Wisconsin too, because Jack Cincy was, and he is a great football player, and you saw that Beagle went last year in the fourth round, I guess, to Green Bay, and he hadn't played because he got injured up there. But Cincy is, better than, in my opinion, than Beagle, and I love Beagle. So, and Cincy was really, I mean, number 48 was all over the place on every one of these tapes, as was 42, who was Watt. But anyway, so defensively, they've got a lot of draftable guys like Alec James at defensive end. Connor Sheehy is a bigger defensive end. In the 3-4 scheme, he can anchor in there, or he can kick it down inside, and they go a 4-man front. Garrett Dooley, an outside linebacker. He wears number 5 this year. Last year he wore 55, but he is a super active player. And then a couple juniors, Orr and Edwards on the inside are very good football players. Another outside linebacker, Leon Jacobs, isn't getting a lot of play, but you see 32 in there in the piles. They're 2 corners. I really like, they moved actually Dakota Dixon. They moved him to safety this year, but he played corner last year and really did a heck of a job. He's a big corner, they moved to strong safety this year, which is going to help his value because he can do both. And then Tyndall, the corner, they have another corner there. So they got quite a few, pro prospects on defense that whether they're middle, late round guys,
yeah, sure.
But plenty of those guys there.
Yeah, and that's the thing though. They don't necessarily have a TJ Watt this year. But they do have, especially with Sitchy out, but they do have a lot of talent. That's the same thing that we'll talk about with Georgia. But offensively, I mean, is the top prospect overall Fumagalli, the tight end?
Yeah, he is. He has he's shown some run after catch ability and things like that. Last year, he actually was probably more productive than even this year for them because they're running the ball with that freshman Jonathan Taylor, who's just tearing it up. Right now. And then Hornibrook is better, the quarterback. He's the lefty, throwing. But yeah, Fumagalli right now, or you could say the strong safety or corner Dixon will be up there, but Fumagalli right now is probably, but I tell you, Jazz Peavy is really good one. He's got speed, so he could, maybe move up, up a little higher too, because he's got return ability to him. I mean, he does a nice job returning punts and things like that, along with running reverses and everything.
All right, and with Georgia, look, this team's for real. They have a coach, Smart, who was a well sought after coordinator when he was running Alabama's defense for Saban. Got the gig with Georgia when Rick left, and last year, like we see with a lot of coaches, it's a transition year. But boy, this year, and I know the competition hasn't been fantastic. Tennessee's down. They're definitely better than Mississippi. They beat Notre Dame on the road, and Notre Dame is still not, where they want to be either. But still, they're winning every game. Their defense has been fantastic, and they're doing it even though their quarterback Jacob Eason's been out. Even though Eason's has been worked back in slowly into the lineup the last two games. Jake Fromm, a lot of people think he's a more talented player than Eason, but he's still a freshman. But he doesn't have to do much when you've got Chubb, Michelle, and you got that defense, and you've got Bellamy and Carter. Those got to be two of the top guys on defense for Georgia.
Absolutely. You got your they bring the pass rush, and Carter, it kind of he's that long, rangy kind of guy, and then Bellamy plays the run probably a little bit better, but both of them are big time pass rushers, and then you got Akins in the middle as a run stuffer, the nose tackle.
All right.
Atkins, rather.
Okay. But overall, though, really, but none of these guys. I mean, like who's the most, like which player specifically would be the highest rated player, and what round are we talking about? Because we're not talking about superstars either here.
No, Carter could be. He could possibly work into a second round pick.
Okay.
Just depends on production and things like that. And of course, that's on the defensive side. Now on the offensive side, Chubb and Michelle, yep. It's going to depend what if you like chocolate ice cream or vanilla, really.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on now. Before we talk NFL, I listed my teams, the top teams that I believe, the group of 5 teams, which are basically the top teams outside the Power 5 schools, that we know one team is going to get an opportunity to play for a big bowl. You wonder whether or not that could be a bad thing, because is that almost like, hey, if anybody goes undefeated in one of these schools, then as long they'll be happy, we would just stick them into one of these New Year's Day bowl games, but we're not putting you anywhere near the playoffs. I don't know. I guess we'll find out, because one of those teams might have something to say about that this year, and that's San Diego State. And when I take a look at San Diego State, we talked a lot about Penny, the running back, but San Diego State, because they have the win over Stanford, if Stanford goes on to have a nice season, no reason to think that they won't. I don't know what kind of a special season, but a nice season. And San Diego State can go undefeated. It could make things very interesting. But we might have a San Diego State, Colorado State Mountain West Championship, because I think those are the two best teams right now. And then you take a look at the AAC, where you have South Florida and Central Florida. And those two teams are going to play each other in the last game of the regular season, which I think will decide who wins that division. And then whoever wins the division is just going to crank it and win the whole thing in the championship game. So I think when you look, you got those two teams from each conference, San Diego State, Colorado State, South Florida, Central Florida. If you matched up those teams based on both talent on the rosters as well as just what do you think, who's stronger? Which top two teams, which conferences with those two top teams are stronger?
Well, I think of those four teams, I'd pick San Diego State. I'm kind of with you on that, but I think South Florida has got a lot of talent there too. Certainly their quarterback is a playmaker, and then they had Mack who had really a good game last week for the Indianapolis. Who if he was still around this year, they would really be cooking with gas. But anyway, I think San Diego State, because they play a little bit of a bastard defense, I guess you'd call it, too, with the way they stand up when they blitz those guys all over the place. And, they've done it for years. And so I think that they're hard, very hard to the only game they had that was shaky early was that, when they played in the rain with Air Force. They when it finally stopped raining, then they started rolling again, and everything. But I think that they're the team, and then second, then I would go with South Florida after San Diego State, and then Scott Frost done a great job at Central Florida and getting those guys going. Because remember, just a few years ago, they're either 1-10 or 0-11, and last year they made really good strides, and then this is his second year there. So.
What about the talent? What about the defensive talent? I mean, South Florida has Augie Sanchez and Dietrich Nichols, or a couple of AAC performers from last year, while Central Florida has Jameis Pittman. They've got Garrod. Both those guys are up front, and they've got Shaquem Griffin at linebacker. Which player do you like the most defensively out of those two teams?
Well, the guy that's probably getting a lot of the most play is Shaquem Griffin, the outside linebacker from Central Florida. But right now, these guys are still just coming on and everything. But
it's early.
I tell you, Central Florida, like I said, Scott Frost has really done a great job there.
Yep.
And so, I think that now it wouldn't shock me, though, because, I think Charlie Strong will, help these, or should help the defense and stuff get better by the end of the year. But, I think that the big thing that they can do at South Florida is they can move that ball with Flowers.
Flowers,
and,
they're high potent. Yeah.
And they got, they've got a lot of guys on defense that are going to be low round free agent guys. That they've got I think I got 1, 2, 3, about 5 of them that, are going to be in the mix. And then there's about 4 of them on offense guys. So, you got 9 guys that have got a chance to get in the NFL. So that's pretty good from a, non-Power 5 school.
Yeah. The Knights are a big game in a couple of weeks, and they're going to go to the Navy. And then, like I said, they end the season at home against South Florida. Where South Florida's schedule is really, really conducive for them to run the table. It would be surprising if they didn't, to tell you the truth, because they only have one other road game the rest of the season. Even though it is going to be, and it's not a gimme, because I think Willie Fritz is already starting to do a nice job at Tulane. But still, the schedule looks really nice for South Florida. That game should be really fun to watch at the end of the year. And Colorado State is also a team on the rise. Mike Bobo's doing a nice job there. He's got Nick Stevens as the starting quarterback. Gallup and Dawkins are a couple of players, and even their center Jake Bennett. So do they have any players either offensively or defensively that could go somewhere in the middle rounds?
Yeah, Gallup. I
Gallup,
think Gallup,
okay.
The receiver. Yeah, he'll probably end up going. It depends on a lot of stuff. Basically, what kind of verified speed he has, but he's certainly been a difference maker for that team. And then Stevens is probably going to be a free agent kind of guy, but he's just been inconsistent. He's very, very good, or he can be really bad. And he got yanked a year ago out there, and so
yeah.
And then so we'll just have to see if he can get some real consistency to finish out the year.
All right, let's move on to the NFL. And as I talked about at the Open with Kevin Hogan, and I was a Kevin Hogan fan. I really liked what he did. Following Andrew Luck was no easy thing, but he got better and better the more games he played. And you knew you weren't looking at Luck. You completely understood that. But he's just one of these quarterbacks, college quarterbacks, that you felt very comfortable with. One of those really good leaders, smart guy, Stanford guy, perfect quarterback for that program. But okay, comes into the pros, and you're thinking, all right, this guy is just maybe I never hear from him again. I mean, we haven't even heard from Aaron Murray, for crying out loud. So why would I not be surprised if I didn't hear from Kevin Hogan? And maybe that's what we thought. I mean, Cody Kessler was there, played last year, and didn't play poorly. And then they draft Kaiser, and immediately Kaiser gets the gig. And then finally, they got sick of Kaiser, Jackson did, and they put in Hogan after halftime, and he ignited the offense and statistically did a great job. Almost led the comeback win. And now he gets the start, and he deserves the start. So, what kind of a guy is Kevin Hogan in whether or not he has the ability to be a starter, or is this just a guy that, he'll be in there for a few weeks and then Kaiser will be back?
Well, I think I always thought that Kevin would be a really good backup NFL quarterback, get you out of a game, win some games for you and things like that. I didn't know, and I don't know if you ever really know until, you get them in the game to see what they can do, because, he's going to get his chance, and, we'll see. Because he doesn't make a lot of, bad decisions, and he like you said, he's a very smart guy, and it was a 4-year starter at Stanford in a pro-style West Coast offense. So he's been in a pro-style offense and everything. So, no, in fact, he was perfect for Kansas City, and then they ended up cutting him. And then, because they had, they keep fooling around with, a couple other guys they had that were down the line. We're not talking about the, Smith and Hopkins right now, but anyway, so long story short, that he's going to get his chance at Cleveland, and we'll see what if he can be more than maybe just a career backup.
What does he have to do better at the pro level to convince you that he could start?
Accuracy and anticipation, just he had a touchdown catch the other day. It was a great touchdown catch, and that throw behind
the
Njoku. Receiver, and so he's just got to be more on point with his accuracy. But like I said, hey, he was sitting on the bench, and they pulled him in and said, hey, go to it. And but now with a week of practice and everything, he might be a lot sharper.
All right. Also at Cleveland, look, Williams really knows what he's doing on defense. Very smart guy. I've talked a lot about that before over the last few years, and especially this year. And that's not the reason Cleveland's losing. But I noticed that they've got that secondary playing better too. And maybe this is part of the reason why Joe Hayden's not around anymore, because Bodie Calhoun, who went undrafted playing for the Gophers, is having a very good season for the Browns. And also doing a good job at safety is Derek Kindred. So these aren't these household names. What should we know about Bodie Calhoun and Kindred?
Well, Bodie Calhoun is a guy that we got in the East-West game from Minnesota. We've had quite a few of their corners in the last few years that have done well. And but Calhoun is Bodie Calhoun is a real smart guy that's very instinctive and breaks on the ball well. He's got good short area quickness, and he's got a lot of confidence in his ability. And again, you wonder what scouts look at sometimes, because we got tons of them all over the league that weren't even drafted that are starting and things. And Bodie Calhoun's just another one of them.
All right. The L.A. Rams, another player in the secondary that is not a household name right now, had a big interception last week in his first start against Seattle, and their loss is John Johnson. And so he is obviously going to get another chance there. Talk about John Johnson and whether or not this is a guy that has an opportunity or be able to take advantage of the opportunity to start.
Well, the thing is, when you get a new defensive coordinator in there, like Phillips, he brings a different kind of, experience and enthusiasm and things that, that Johnson, he'd be in a third round draft choice. It wasn't like, like he's very similar, although I think Simmons a little bit better. It's up at Denver right now, but Johnson was a very consistent player, and then he got his opportunity to go in and start there at the Rams, and he's taken advantage of it. And I think a lot has to do with the way that Phillips has those guys playing back there, the way they align. If they're playing with 5 secondary people back there, what his job is. They've each got a specific assignment that they can follow through with and play. And Johnson took advantage of it. I mean, like I said, Phillips he's been around a long time, 40 years in pro football, and he's going to get you lined up in the right spot. And if you can do it, then you're going to be able to play for him.
Yeah, another Boston College player that,
yep.
Boy, they keep bringing players into the NFL, and you just wonder how come they don't win more. I mean, they win, they go to bowls, but it's been a long time since I don't even know. When was the last time they've been? Well, of course, they had Matt Ryan at quarterback. They had a little bit something going on there, but still, it's been a while. Doug Flutie. All right, so what about Tyler Higbee? Tyler Higbee is starting to now become the number 1 tight end with the Rams, and I know everybody's a one-dimensional tight end now in the NFL. Receiver and really not a whole lot of blocking skills. He came from Western Kentucky, high-powered offense and all that. But he's been a lot more productive. He's getting a lot more reps than Everett.
Yeah, to me, I thought Everett was overdrafted in the second round. He was a receiver there basically, at South Alabama, and Higbee is more of your prototype defensive end. He's a little bit bigger, he blocks a little bit better. Everett is, he's your move guy like a Reed from Washington and stuff like that. So, and that's why he was drafted there to fit in with McVay's system. But Tyler Higbee is your classic tight end, and he caught the ball well at Western Kentucky. He was their go-to guy.
Yep.
For Dowdy when he was there, and so he knows how to catch the ball, and they're taking advantage of his size and matchup ability.
Last thing, and that is with Goff. It wasn't his best game against Seattle. He's going to have those games. He's still young. He was off by an inch or two on the pass to Kupp in the end zone, which even as bad as they played against Seattle, they were that close from winning that game. And I think that bodes well for them. They've gotten off to a great start, and no reason to think that if they just don't, if they keep improving, including, of course, Goff, with all the problems Seattle's going through, that the Rams might not be able to go into Seattle when they play and win that game and win this division. So this team's for real, and as we know, as long as the quarterback plays well in the NFL, that cures a lot of ills. So, how impressive you have been the way Goff's been playing this season compared to last season now that McVay is there?
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, he looks so much more confident, and the way he's throwing the ball and getting his feet under him, and he's got that quick release, and he's showing you that, that he can really whistle the ball. And so, now that you see him out there, what he's doing in streaks right now, you say, well, hey, I know why this guy was, the first pick in the draft, or he's certainly worth an early pick. So, I tell you, it's amazing what a new coach does for you. And, of course, it's always been a train wreck with the Rams when Jeff Fisher is offensive coordinator and offensive line coaches and stuff there. Just it was always a disaster year after year, and they can have the best players in the world, But if you don't know what to do with them, a.k.a. Tavon Austin, who stayed on the bench for a couple of years, and So, but anyway, no, I tell you, Jared Goff is, I think he's a real deal, and I think he's going to be an ascending player.
All right. So once again, they can just go to Ourlads.com and order a subscription. There are some subscription opportunities there, depending on what you're interested in. But if you go now, you can get the Ourlads NFL Draft Preview, the early one that's out. And we'll talk more about that in the coming months. What's the next thing that the fans could look forward to? Is it for a few months? Is it going to be just a newsletter and, of course, the website?
Yeah, there'll be newsletters every month. The next newsletter is how all the guys that got drafted, and then the undrafted free agents, how they're faring, on the different teams to this point in the season. And usually that comes out, it'll be coming out pretty soon, because it's usually after the 6 or 7 games they get under their belt, and then it kind of, a little bit how these guys are playing or were injured or what have you.
Dan, appreciate it. We'll talk to you next Wednesday.
Great. Thanks a million, Greg.
Thank you. That's Dan Shonka, and that'll wrap it up for today's show. We'll see you next Wednesday here on the Ourlads Football Network. Don't forget, you can listen to all of our on-demand shows within minutes following every broadcast on our YouTube or iTunes pages under Prime Sports Network. You can also read our daily football content at Ourlads.com under the blog section. And don't forget, you got the NFL's and college football's best depth charts in the industry. So don't forget that. College football depth charts are always available, including the NFL at Ourlads.com. If you have any questions or comments, participate on the show with a message, you can do that by following us on Twitter at PrimeSN. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Greg DePalma. We'll see you again on Thursday when Tony Mejia and I preview Week 6 in the NFL for more Ourlads Football Network programming. We will never see the truth around.